All right, let's go back to the Xfinity mobile call-in line and welcome in Mina Kimes of ESPN and the Mina Kimes Show. Mina, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. That was a great ad read, by the way. I was sitting while you're doing the Ashley's furniture. Super well done.
Thank you very much. That means a lot coming from a pro. Um, okay, last time we talked to you was right before week one. So we now have
Wow.
two games to discuss. And I guess the question is for if you're talking to the in-laws and they're telling you, "Oh, this passing game is terrible. Like we're 2-0, but that's not good enough." Do you play along or do you say, "No, you're 2-0. Don't worry about it. It'll get better."
I might agree with them that the passing game is something to talk about. I don't think it's something to hit the panic button over. They literally have gone through this now for a couple of years, right? And I think being 2-0 matters, and I think it matters against decent competition, and I think the defense is playing well, and the run game looks fantastic. But if you want to get back to the Super Bowl and win it, and that should be the goal for the Philadelphia Eagles, this passing game has to look better than it has early on.
And so, what to you jumps out there? Because we have talked a lot this week about the predictability. Everything is these
Yeah.
2-by-2 sets, and when they, by formation, they have been very predictable. I am personally like I am offended by how much 12 and 13 personnel they've been playing. I don't think you need to run out of that, but that's a separate conversation. In the passing game, what jumps out to you?
Well, they've like only run out of 12, right? At least that was
Correct.
when I was looking this last week. Yeah, so that's not good. Obviously Goddard, that's a big part of that. But just the deployment of AJ Brown, I think is probably the single biggest, most annoying thing to watch. I mean,
Does he
think
look all the way right to you?
I don't think that's the problem.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like conservatively 60% of his targets were slants. I don't have the chart in
Yeah,
front of me.
I think that is conservative. Yes.
um he's way too good to be limited this way. Like, how about a crosser? Can we get him on a crosser? I just he's AJ Brown. He's giant. He's fast. He catches everything. He beats up corners. So I that's been frustrating to me because I think defenses are going to keep blitzing them. We can talk about that with the Rams, and the answer to the blitz has to be something other than just AJ on a slant or a pray or go ball to Devontae.
Mina, do you find them to be, as somebody who looks at the entire league, a frustrating team to talk about? Because you have things, you just said, how about a crosser, like a very simple thing, an intermediate route, and yet they're the Super Bowl champions. They're 2-0, and they just ruthlessly win every single week. But it just seems like the offense is very predictable. They have two star receivers who are not getting the ball at all, but yet they continue to just win games.
No, I enjoy talking about them because at least we can like diagnose things. Like what I find frustrating is the team like the Ravens that loses in dumb ways, right?
Oh
Mm.
yeah.
And as an analyst, they'll ask me the next day on TV, "What's wrong with the Ravens?" And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Stop losing in stupid ways. Whereas with Philadelphia, they're very talented and. I think you can actually point to specific things like, hey, let's see AJ Brown use this way. Hey, maybe defensively, I actually think the defense looked pretty good. But I think with Philadelphia, it's part of the reason why I'm not panicking. They're too talented. They're so
Hmm.
talented. They'll figure it out. There's obviously the coaching change. So um, I think as a fan, I'm sure it's frustrating to watch them, have the Ferrari parked the way that it's been, but at least it's fixable.
And so I want to ask you about this because we've been trying to get beyond, okay, like, is this good or bad, the way that they're playing, and more like, what is the why behind it? And Sirianni and Patullo have talked about this a little bit. And to me, it feels like maybe they have like learned the wrong lesson from last season, which is just that, okay, if we don't turn the ball over and we sort
Yeah.
of like decrease the variance, we are going to out talent people, and that's going to be good enough. And I do feel like that is wasting your resources a little bit. But how do you feel about that? Like, given the talent that they have, AJ Brown and also Devontae Smith, who is going underutilized, like, are you okay with like let's just make this game as low
Yeah.
possession and like very basic as possible, and then we're going to come out in the end because maybe our defense will make a big turnover. I mean, two red zone turnovers in a row these last 2 weeks. Or I mean, are you of the opinion that like if you have a talent advantage, you probably want to maximize possessions and you want to make it so that over the course of more possessions, your talent's going to win out that way?
like kind of leading the witness a little bit.
I
with the
know.
way you
I,
worded that
I
one.
did at the end there. I didn't quite land the plane.
Competition matters a lot. Okay, so I think week 1 things were really thrown by the Jalen Carter injury, and I feel like that kind of threw that whole game out, into chaos. And week 2, I think they correctly identified that they had a talent advantage versus the Chiefs offense. And obviously Steve Spagnuolo, it's tricky with what he does pressure wise. So I think you can write that off to some extent. I don't think that's going to fly against this Rams offense. I think this is the week where you need to see the Ferrari come out of the garage, because this Rams offense can go. Matthew Stafford has looked incredible for the first 2 weeks of the season. I think the combination of Davante Adams and Puka Nacua is going to give this Eagles defense unique issues. So the offense needs to keep up. You cannot play that style of football. You can't be conservative in this game. You got to make the most of your talent on offense against this, and also competition, because the Rams defense, I think on the secondary, there's a lot of places that the Eagles can take advantage of. But you got to throw to your monsters to take advantage of those weaknesses. So I think this is the week you got to see it.
Okay, let's get into this matchup then. And for those who don't know, you know this Rams team very well. You spent the preseason doing their games, right? So let's start on the Rams offensive side of the ball. And given the history of McVay and Fangio, this is obviously going to be a fun chess match. But if you are game planning for, okay, we know the Eagles have this one weakness at that outside corner spot in Adoree Jackson, do you expect that, and E.J. Smith brought this up earlier, do you expect that maybe Puka Nacua spends more time on the outside than in the slot so that he can go up against Adoree Jackson?
I got into this a little bit on my show, Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny, previewing the game. So I went back and looked at how they used Nacua in the divisional round, and he was lined up way wide, way more than he's used to. Quinion Mitchell got hurt in that game. You remember that, of course. And Stafford, I think over 50% of his targets in that game were to receivers lined up wide, which is way above his average. We usually think of Puka Nacua being aligned in the slot or tied to the formation, but there was a concerted effort to de-emphasize Cooper Dean in that game. John McVay is a very smart coach, right? He's not going to roll out there and say, let's do what we do. He is going to find ways to go after your second cornerback position, whether it's Nacua or Davante Adams, who I think looks really good. In my mind, there's only so much you can do to protect that early on. The Vic Fangio, he's not leaving him on an island. He tries to give him safety help. But the other thing with the Rams is, like, the way Stafford is playing, even if you have great coverage, he's killing guys. To me, it's all about Jalen Carter and getting quick pressure. Of course, you remember he basically called game the last time these teams played. The Jalen Carter, the impact he had in that game was so dramatic that the Rams just completely changed they brought back an old center because they were so upset about that. So I think, but the Rams offensive line has looked like a question mark to me early on. Stafford's been under a lot of pressure, and I think quick pressure is going to be key. Can you get it up the middle against this and flush Stafford out of the pocket? I think that's going to be paramount for Philadelphia.
Mina, what did you make of Fangio going blitz heavy against the Chiefs? I mean, I thought that was pretty cool after the Super Bowl, when he famously doesn't blitz at all. And he gets asked in his press conference this week, well, why did you blitz more? And he said, well, I needed to this time. I didn't need to the last game that we played.
Well, he also, he took him by surprise a few times, right? I mean, other than Mahomes scrambling, he mostly got him. The Makuba blitz, I loved. I think I said this on NFL Live, but the Eagles blitzed their DBs at the lowest rate in football last year. Third down, dime personnel. Who's thinking they're going to send Makuba? I loved that from Fangio. It was right for that opponent. Don't know if it's exactly right, though, for this one. I think with this one, you really want to get pressure with 4. You really want the interior, I think in particular, to dominate the way that Jalen Carter is capable of, but hasn't shown thus far.
All right, other side of the ball, back to the discussion of the Eagles offense. What should we expect from the Rams defense?
So Rams defense, pretty similar to last year. Very good 4-man rush. Weaknesses behind that. I think you can run on them. Ahkello Witherspoon is not playing in this game, so I think we're probably going to see a lot of Emmanuel Forbes.
Which I mean, listen, I don't know if you remember this, Mina, but A.J. Brown essentially ended his
basically
career.
Wise Ram.
Right, exactly. So, if they can't get A.J. going this week, then we really got some problems.
Yeah, or whoever's on him. And I also think you want to run at him. He's a smaller corner. The Eagles have been, it's looked to me like it's been a lot of outside zone this season thus far. I think that's a matchup you want. You want to make Emmanuel Forbes tackle if he's out there. I think it's just going to be for me, for Hurts and Patullo, not just Hurts. Chris is going to throw a lot at you. He's pretty creative with his pressure design. You saw that actually, right? In the divisional round, I remember he got them a few times with simulated pressures where he'd walk up the linebackers. You could tell Hurts was bothered by that. So I think they have to come up with a plan for pressure, not just a standard rush. And they got to get Hurts answers that aren't just slant to AJ Brown over and over.
Right. Or chuck it deep, which that worked okay. I'd like to see a little bit more of that.
They had like a play action pass, I think, to Granson, I want to say, that I loved in this last game.
It was like I thought that might have been an RPO. It was like the only one they ran all day.
Was it an RPO? Yeah. And then they popped a screen to Devontae too. That was excellent. That was very successful, if I remember correctly. Like, just mix it up, please.
Yes, that's actually the one, and we haven't talked about this. The one part of the offense that looks better this year than last year is the screen game, which was mostly non-existent last year. What is your read on Jalen, Mina? Because to our eyes, he's actually playing better than he did last year. It seems like he's seeing things quicker. It's just that maybe the answers aren't quite there.
Yeah, he's fine. I think it's hard to know if it's sometimes with the absence of the passing game, if it's about him, if it's scheme versus him not pulling the trigger on stuff, right? I think he has thrown the ball well. He looks really dynamic as a scrambler this season or on designed runs. So the ability is there. I think it's just kind of like, is it willingness or is it coaching right now that's constricting this offense? I think we're going to learn a lot this week.
Okay. Mina Kimes, very last question, very quick. Which is a bigger violation from EJ? Thinking that the Beatles are just okay or never having heard of Limp Bizkit?
Wow. Probably the Beatles take, because Limp Bizkit feels like a generational thing. He's really young, right?
He's 31. I feel like it's within range.
I'm definitely the Limp Bizkit generation, and I don't think we're better for it. So,
all right.
I'll say the Beatles thing.
Mina Kimes, thank you so much. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Bye, guys.